You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, my name is Bob Gilligan, and I'm the director of the Catholic Conference of Illinois, and thank you for joining us here this morning on what hopefully was a beautiful Easter celebration. We are taping this program a couple days earlier because we're not going to be here on Monday, so welcome to our program here this morning. Nevertheless, we still have a good lineup, interesting topics to talk about. Let me go over the rundown for the program here this morning, and we should remind you that we are also being podcast, and so you can check out the podcast, the Catholic Conference Radio Hour, on YouTube, as well as on the radio here this morning on AM 750 WNDZ. Let's go over the lineup here briefly. We have three topics we're going to talk about today. The first topic is something we are starting to get more involved with, and we'll have a very interesting conversation with our first guest. His name is Mark McCombs. He is a public policy analyst for a group called the Safer Foundation, and Mr. McCombs will come in and talk to us a little bit about the Safer Foundation, describe to us what's going on there. We'll talk for about 15-20 minutes with Mark, then we'll make a jump to our second guest is my colleague in the state of Florida, Mike Sheedy. He's going to talk to us what's been going on in Florida. All we hear about is Disney and what's going on in the public schools with regard to legislation that is pending there. The whole country's talking about it. So we'll get Mike's take on it at about 20 after. And then our final guest is somebody who I just met recently. His name is Shane Hartman. He is the new executive director of the Illinois Church Action on Alcohol and Addiction Problems. They are probably most known for their stance against casino gaming and things like that. And we're going to talk to Shane not only about those topics, but what can we do to best assist people who do have problems with alcohol addiction, gaming addiction, etc. So Shane is new to the job. He'll have some good insights there. And we'll talk to him at 20 till the hour, or 40 after, if I can do my math correctly. So let's do this. Without further ado, let's bring in our first guest. His name is Mark McCombs. He is the public policy analyst for a group called the Safer Foundation. Mark, can you hear me? You can see me.
I can hear you, Bob. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us here for a couple minutes this morning. Mark, let's talk first of all. I'm sure many people do not exactly know what the Safer Foundation is. Why don't you describe what Safer Foundation is and your role in it?
Sure. Thank you, Bob. And thank you so much for making the time for us this morning. Safer Foundation is one of the nation's oldest and largest organizations that's solely dedicated to serving the ReEntry community, people who have been incarcerated and are making the transition to reentering their communities. We try to do that on what we feel is a holistic basis that responds to the social determinants that cause people to recidivate, and to try and address those issues in a manner that helps people succeed and thrive and not wind up going back to prison. We do things like job training, job development, education. We provide housing resources, mental health resources, physical health resources if necessary. We address food insecurity issues. All of the myriad of problems and obstacles that an individual faces when they're trying to make that very difficult transition from prison back into their communities.
How does somebody find you? I would think that if I had done something wrong, went through the penal justice system and was released, I probably go back to where I was before I got arrested. I think most do. They probably go back to that same lifestyle, which I think does probably lead to some problems with people recidivizing, if that's the right word, or committing bad acts again that get them in trouble. So, like, how do you find these people? Do they find you? Do you search for them? Tell us how that works.
All of the above.
Okay.
And we work very closely with the Illinois Department of Corrections
Oh, good.
to create what we like to call a warm handoff between IDOC and the community, so that, especially more so in the pandemic era, one of the, lack of a better term, blessings in disguise of the pandemic and the emergency release that occurred from Illinois prisons as a result of that was the collaboration we were able to engage in with IDOC to create what we call peer or prison emergency early release response program. That did create that warm handoff where individuals, inmates in the system, were provided with contact information to connect them with one of our community navigators, so that there would be a person there, a voice on the other end of the phone, ready and waiting for them when they get out. So we do some of that. Some of it is outreach into communities. Some of it is people just finding us at our website, www.saferfoundation.org. We do things like I did immediately before this broadcast, where we did a webinar on various Know Your Rights, Know Your Remedies, Know Your Resources topics that are broadcast directly into IDOC and Cook County facilities to be able to get the word out as to what people's rights are and to give them an idea of the type of resources that we provide.
So it's not only prisons that we tend to think. Well, I don't know. Maybe I do because of just the nature of we're focused on state stuff. So it's not only prisons; it's jails as well. You're in Cook County Jail and the local and municipal jails as well, I guess, throughout the state.
Yeah. We're in Cook County Jail. We're trying to expand into the Collier County jails, and then into the IDOC facilities.
So I have this notion that I think that I'm not sure if this is true, but it seems that because of the population center being in Cook County and Chicago, a disproportionate number of the crimes are probably committed in Cook County, Chicago. And if an individual is sentenced in the state system, they probably go downstate or in the central part of the state. So, and I would think that is also, I mean, you're isolated in jail anyway. I get that, or in prison. But then going back to where you were, there's that geographic kind of change in your lifestyle. It can be, I mean, these individuals, I'm sure, have been incarcerated for what, 3, 5, maybe even longer, 10 years, that kind of thing. So it's got to be a difficult transition if you're really truly trying to reform your life, getting back into, a healthy lifestyle that doesn't lead to, the bad behavior before.
It is a difficult transition. And what we see especially is that probably about half of the incarcerated population returns to the Chicago area. Most of those individuals return to one of 6 neighborhoods in Chicago. Those 6 neighborhoods represent about 10% of the city's population, but it also represents about 25% of the violent crimes in the city and 30% of the homicides. So this is part of the problem, is that we continue to try and address these issues by creating penalty enhancements and by creating new crimes, instead of looking at what were the social determinants that got people into this situation to begin with, or cause them to continue to get into this situation. Brookings Institution, I think, put it best. Most folks that wind up in prison didn't have much of a first chance, let alone a second chance. Sure. If penalty enhancements and new crimes worked, we wouldn't wind up with the 40% recidivism rate that we have now. We've got to create healthy people, because when we create healthy people, we create healthy communities.
Yeah. So the way you and I have kind of intersected here is I'm glad to hear the good work Safer Foundation's doing, but there's some public policy changes too. I think that you have come across some problems with the law, some problems with funding programs, that kind of thing. Talk to us a little bit about kind of what Safer Foundation perceives as challenges in the current law, and maybe some ways that we can make things a little better from a macro perspective.
Well, as I said, it's no secret that we have violence going on in our communities. we don't see the answer as being as what's happened traditionally, and even what happened in the last recently adjourned session of the legislature, where we try and create new crimes, we try and penalty enhance our way out of this. As I said, if we did that, we wouldn't have 4 out of 10 of our incarcerated individuals going back to prison, and we wouldn't have the state's current projection, where that rate is not going to go down in the current fiscal year. The cost to Illinois every time someone recidivates is $151,000. The projection for the 5-year period ending next year is a total of somewhere between 13 and 17 billion dollars, and that's the dollar cost. The cost to our neighborhoods in terms of crime and violence is even higher, and I don't think that it's any secret or any need to go through that. Mm-hmm. So what we see is the need to reimagine the way we respond to individuals who are becoming justice involved. And we've done this through a 6-bill package that we've caused to be introduced into the legislature that we call our Second Chance State Initiative. And without going through the hundreds of pages that are involved in that, there are 2 main components that I wanted to highlight. One is the need to consolidate the, for lack of a better term, hodgepodge of uncoordinated, siloed programs that are out there now that cause that returning resident a tremendous amount of frustration, because they don't know that they're out there. If they do know that they're out there, they don't know how to access it. I always say it's like trying to treat an ill patient with 15 doctors at 15 different hospitals, none of whom talk to each other and all of whom keep the patient on hold for an hour. We want to consolidate that into a single statewide agency that we're calling an Office of Returning Resident Affairs that will coordinate all of the different programs across the state through community-based organizations operating from 13 different hubs around the state. And it replicates very much what the General Assembly did when it passed the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. And then we also want to reimagine when we start this process. Instead of starting it when people are being released from prison, we want to reimagine Illinois' response to begin to provide services to individuals upon their first contact with the judicial system, when there is much more that can be done than later on in the process when there's a lot more that needs to be undone. So that gives you a basic idea of what we're doing. And then, of course, there are component issues that address education, housing, employment, through a public works contracts bill, and the tremendous shortage of behavioral health care workers that are available not just to the formerly incarcerated, but to the state as a whole.
I want to talk a little bit about, you had mentioned from the first point of contact when they first come in. It seems that's the time to start working on reducing recidivism when the person first gets into the prison, into the criminal justice system. We have been involved in the past with some efforts to try to enact like incentive programs for good behavior, and and pay for participation in programs, that kind of thing. And we were never wildly successful with the Department of Corrections. And I know the Department of Corrections has a lot on its plate. Their main job is to make sure that, people are secure and safe and don't harm others in the jail. But there's also a component, I thought, of rehabilitation. And it just seems that they sort of struggle with that, and I'm not pointing fingers and blame, but it does seem that we need to have a little bit more attention given to what happens when individuals go in there on the rehabilitation, as opposed to just warehousing them for 10 years or however long their sentence is.
Well, and that's very true. That if you talk to like I do regularly, like I have in the past, if you talk to people who have been incarcerated, they'll tell you that it's not really correctional, and it's not really rehabilitative. It's exactly what you said. It's warehousing, and I always get a kick out of because you can see the progression as people get older. The biggest deterrent to crime is age.
That's right.
The guys who've been in there, the people who've been in there for a while will tell you, hey, you reach a certain age, this isn't fun anymore.
Right.
And to IDOC's credit, that is changing. I think that the current administration recognizes the need to start focusing more on keeping these beds from getting refilled, from closing that revolving door of intergenerational recidivism. But once we get, our focus and our emphasis has been that once we get to that point, we've already lost a tremendous amount of time in that person's life and a tremendous amount of ability to change. And we've lost that ability to prevent the impact that incarceration has on an individual, on an individual's family, on an individual's community, because they all are impacted by that person going to jail. That's why we feel the need to not ignore that focus, because it's crucially important, but to start much earlier in the process and to provide the services that an individual needs. And I stress the word individual, because every individual's need is different. And I think that's one of the issues that the provision of service in the state of Illinois has not taken into account, that we need to focus on what that particular person needs at the beginning of the process, so that, as I said, there's more that can be done than at the end, when there's a lot more that we have to undo.
Yeah, and then you have that transition, as you indicated. Once the person is out, let's say they are trained or they have taken this seriously, the struggles that they must encounter when they get out to try to be a productive citizen and contribute and get their lives back in order has to be very difficult. Because I think you said that they all, almost like X percentage of them, go back to like 6 neighborhoods in Chicago. So, it's and then the question becomes, in those neighborhoods, are there jobs there? Are there services to help them? So they kind of stay on a good path. That's got to be very difficult for people coming out, because unfortunately they probably tend to go back into the same situations they were before they got in.
Well, you think about it for a second, Bob. We warehouse these people. We don't provide them with the necessary training that they need, especially with young people who are coming out. We don't do a heck of a lot to provide anything for them. They come out oftentimes without the ability to receive health care, without the ability to receive the mental health services that they need, and they go back into the environment from which they came, where, for generations, they've seen the same situation, and then we're surprised that they wind up back in prison. And we really shouldn't. The unemployment rate for returning residents, for formerly incarcerated people, is higher than the unemployment rate was for all people in the United States during the Great Depression. The housing insecurity rates are off the charts, where homeless men, I think it's something like 2/3 of the homeless men in the Chicago area report having had a prior criminal conviction. So unless we start getting to these social determinants, and again, doing it on an individualized basis, because we've learned that one size does not fit all here. We're going to continue to have this enormous rate of 4 out of 10 people going back to prison.
Yeah. I had somebody say to me once years ago, when does the X become an X when you're a felon? It's true. It's tough. I get it.
We say this all the time, is that, incarcerated individuals, and I shared with you that, I'm a formerly incarcerated individual. You get branded with a scarlet letter, and you may be sentenced to 3, 5, 7 years, whatever it is, but you really are sentenced to a lifetime of being unredeemable.
Right.
And we need to change that mindset in Illinois. These are our brothers and our sisters. These are people who are coming back to our neighborhoods. And until we start deciding that we're going to give them a second chance and maybe a third chance and maybe a fourth chance and keep working with them until they have the foundation and the tools and everything they need to succeed and thrive, we're going to continue to have this problem.
Yeah. So there's a couple bills I know you have introduced, but that's probably the topic. I think you've hit on the broad strokes of them, helping individuals when they get on a better track, making that transition when they are released from prison. And just touch briefly, though, you mentioned something about behavioral health. Pick up on that for a minute. I know you mentioned about those opportunities.
Sure. We in Illinois, we have a tremendous, and across the nation, we have a tremendous shortage of behavioral health care workers. I believe that something like 35% of the people in Illinois live in areas that are not properly served by behavioral health care workers. The shortage has gone up by something like 200% in the last few years. Our shortage and the rate of decline has actually gone faster than in the states all around us. To combat that, there have been a number of initiatives that have gone through the General Assembly or tried to go through the General Assembly. Ours in particular is what we call the Second Chance State Behavioral Workforce Training Act, which would provide, I believe, something like 200 scholarships for returning residents to be trained in any number of behavioral health care professions, all the way from psychologists, licensed clinical social workers, to drug and addiction counselors, to peer support. Because what we found is, and it makes common sense, that an individual who has lived experience is more impactful with that returning resident than someone who has not.
Sure.
The person who, when you speak to them, you know that what you're saying resonates with them based on their lived experience, is going to be able to have more of an influence on that returning resident than someone else.
Great. Mark, thanks so much for taking some time this morning. We will talk further about this. It's only April, so we're not going to be doing much of the legislative work here for another couple months. We're all very happy about that. But when we come back, I'm sure we'll have more to talk about with these, I think you said 6 bills you have in your package, and we'll see how far we can get on each of them. Mark, thanks for taking some time, and please check out the Safer Foundation. It's www.saferfoundation.org. That's saferfoundation.org. Mark, thanks so much.
Thanks, Bob.
Yep, take care. Don't go away. We'll be right back. We're going to be joined by Mike Sheedy, who is my counterpart in the state of Florida at the Florida Catholic Conference. We're going to talk about a little bit about what's going on down there with this controversial legislation about what's being taught in schools or not being taught in schools. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Did you know that Catholic Charities accepts car donations? If you're ready to free up space in your garage and put a stop to all those expenses that go along with owning a car, we will gratefully accept your donation, whether the car is running or not. You choose a pickup time that is convenient for you, and we will make the donation as easy as possible, free of charge. You'll receive a charitable donation receipt as well. We accept all types of vehicles nationwide, and you will know that your donation is made to Catholic Charities, an agency you can trust. To learn more about donating your car, call 877-786-4483. That's 877-786-4483. Thank you.
I I feel special. I feel great. I got good grades.
We've seen a huge surge in our kids now meeting or exceeding grade level. Come check us out. You may have never thought we were an option before.
We are hiring. Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Chicago is looking for mission-driven individuals who want to help make a positive difference in the lives of people in need throughout Cook and Lake counties. Be part of a diverse, talented team of professionals in the largest human services organization in the Midwest. We are dedicated to helping people chart a more stable, happier future for themselves, and we accompany anyone in need, regardless of faith, gender, race, or ethnicity. Competitive salaries and generous benefits add to the satisfaction you'll have every day knowing that you're helping us amplify our impact in Chicago. To see our list of employment opportunities, visit CatholicCharities.net.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Bob Gilligan of the Catholic Conference of Illinois, and thank you for listening or watching our program here today. Thanks to Mark McCombs joining us in the first 20 minutes. And now we're going to make a transition to the sunny state of Florida. It is not sunny here, but it is sunny where our next guest resides from. His name is Mike Sheedy. He is the Executive Director of the Catholic Conference of Florida. Mike, are you with us? There he is.
Yes.
Hey, good morning.
It's great to be with you.
Good morning or good afternoon. Your afternoon, I think, right? Yeah. Well, this show's being taped, so this is a morning. We'll say morning. Mike, thanks for taking some time to join us here this morning. So you are my counterpart in Florida for those who are listening or watching, and Mike does the public policy work for the bishops in that state. Illinois has 6 bishops. You have how many do you have to report to?
We have 8 bishops from 7 dioceses.
8 from 7. Okay, I have 6 and a bunch of auxiliaries, but I think you could, yeah, that's enough. Mike, tell us a little bit about. So you guys have been in the news lately, if you haven't noticed, all over the country. Everybody's talking about what's going on in Florida with regard to this controversial legislation. What is the bill that we're talking about? What did it do? This is the bill that pertains to what's taught or not taught in, I think it's only public schools, or is it Catholic schools as well? I assume it's just public.
It is just public schools, Bob, and it is House Bill 1557, Parental Rights in Education. It does a number of things, and it's probably in response to some policies, procedures established in a number of counties across Florida that relate to school district personnel and how they will involve parents in situations when there's been a change in a child's services or monitoring in the school that relates to their physical, emotional, mental health, or well-being. And there have been some challenging cases that result from some of these policies, and the legislature, I think, try to respond to those to bring just some greater clarity and greater parental involvement in these cases.
When just out of curiosity, did the Florida Catholic Conference, did you take a position on the bill? You didn't, yeah. Why would you? It's a public school issue, right? Yeah.
It was, and granted, a lot of Catholic kids go to Catholic schools, and we promote, the common good. Mm-hmm. It was something that, honestly, Bob, was clearly going to pass, whether we took a position or not. And we monitored it to see if it would have any applicability in our schools. Really had no concerns with this bill.
Yeah, we generally do the same thing here in Illinois. When there's a mandate on the public schools, we have, but it's rare when we will take a position on bills that pertain just to public schools and not. And if we're in it, obviously we do, but we do what you probably did, which is monitor it to see if it would affect the non-public school community, and if not, well, it's not really our it's not our place per se to take a public position. I'm just curious, like when that bill was going through, and it passed. When did it pass? It was this year, right? Did it pass this year?
It just recently passed.
It just
Yeah,
recently
was
passed.
signed
Okay.
just recently as well. And it's interesting. It got probably more attention after it passed.
That was my
particularly
question.
from some stakeholders. Yeah.
When it was going on, did you have any idea it would be this national firestorm? I mean, you monitor probably a lot of bills like we do. Did you have any idea that this was what would happen?
Well, I think so. Yes.
You did.
Okay. I mentioned, that there were requirements for the districts to involve parents in some things. There was also a provision that prohibits discussions led by instructors or teachers for kids from kindergarten through grade 3 in the area of sexual orientation or gender identity. And given those topics being debated and creating sort of a safe zone to protect against that, there's no surprise that it became a pretty hotly debated bill.
Yeah. And now that the governor has it, and I mean, it's pretty obvious he's got some, national aspirations, and he's out there talking about this. And I'm just kind of curious to hear your take on it. It seems like Disney has really kind of become the epicenter of this conversation now. And, living thousands of miles from where you are, but, the national media is the national media. It is a little concerning. I'll just speak personally to me, to hear some of the higher ups at Disney saying some of the things that they're saying about their programming, about their orientations, about their goals and everything. And I'm not being critical of Disney, but it does seem like, this company, or Disney, that had such a pristine image about families and children and everything. And we hear some of the conversations going on by their upper level management. It is a little concerning now. And it just seems like we're in an area that is increasingly uncomfortable for a lot of us.
I would have to agree with you, Bob, when it gets into, these questions as Catholics about what it is to be human, anthropology, some of the new ideas that are creeping in, that are gaining traction, perhaps unbelievably. It is interesting when you get into questions about sex and quote unquote gender identity. It's very interesting. We got it in the sports.
Do we ever? Right.
Non-discrimination in employment. It's quite. I will say, for Disney's part, Bob, I think that probably their governmental affairs people looked at this bill and said, this is not an unreasonable bill. I think that for young kids, do we need to be introducing questions about gender identity and sexual orientation, up through the 3rd grade? And after 3rd grade, by the way, the bill does require that any discussions initiated by an instructor are age appropriate. But I think that they said this is kind of reasonable. We shouldn't bother this. And honestly, Disney's enjoyed a lot of favor in the policy realm over decades. Really, they've made their home here. They're moving a lot of their leadership from California to Florida because it's a great environment for Disney. Now, unfortunately, they've drawn the ire of the governor, and I think a lot of the leaders in the legislature, folks who have been supportive of Disney. And things are changing, perhaps. Yeah.
No, we're observing the same thing here about Disney's response to this, because from what I've read, after the fact, I think the CEO said, well, they tried to work behind the scenes to do some things, which is very behind the scenes because no one seems to have any knowledge of that. They didn't sign in on the bill, I don't think. So the people that track legislation are usually pretty knowledgeable about what is in those bills and how it affects their particular entity, whether it's Catholic conference directors or Disney lobbyists. So they probably made a determination that, well, this is not really our fight one way or the other, and probably proceeded as is. And now that the firestorm has come out, I think it seems like their higher ups have now recalculated that spin that they're making to the national press. So it's been a really interesting thing to observe.
I would observe too, Bob, along that line that I think that it's not an unreasonable bill, but I do think that the folks who are trying to actively promote, questionable anthropologies and ways of thinking about it being human, they are extremely reactive. They tend to create a firestorm. They tend to be prone to hyperbole and exaggeration. I guess the pejorative moniker for this bill became the "Don't Say Gay" bill. And people can have respect for people who have homosexual orientation, but that's really not what the bill is all about. It's trying to involve parents in those situations. Kids are struggling, and we would all agree that kids maybe who have sexual orientation struggles should be supported and respected and get the support they need to address their issues. And but it's we see it we've seen it. I think of Indiana having passed a Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It's milder than Florida's that passed a decade ahead of time. But when that passed, it created a firestorm, and people were backing away from that. Or North Carolina passing a law that seemed very reasonable, but there was so much controversy and energy created around it that it was sort of a scorched earth policy by proponents of what I would say is a bad anthropology.
Right, and I think they lost the NCAA tournament. Indiana or North Carolina did, and somebody lost the. Yeah, it seems like there's this knee-jerk reaction in the press with these corporations that causes them to do things that perhaps they didn't want to do, but they had to respond to the fire in front of them. Give us a sense for like people in Florida. Is this a quote unquote hot topic? Is this a big topic? Because it is a big topic throughout the rest of the country. But you're there. I mean, is this on people's minds, and are you kind of sick of it? I would think it seems like a never-ending story.
Bob, it's been in the news here as well.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly, in the political press and in the media, we get plenty of inquiries, people wondering about why we didn't take a bigger role in this, or what should they say? What should they think about it? People had just questions, honestly, legitimate questions, because they're reading different reports and couldn't make sense of them. But I think, one of the encouraging things is that there's really widespread support for the actual provisions in the bill. We've seen, articles about polling that show, even a majority of Democrats or more Democrats support the provisions in the bill than oppose them. Republicans support it very strongly. And so I think when people understand what's in the bill, it's kind of encouraging that people are thinking in what we would say is a pretty healthy way about it when they really understand it.
That's what we're reading here too. I don't know if those polls are Florida specific or national. I think they could be national when people understand what's in the actual bill. I think you said in the 60 some odd percent support it, and even a majority, I think, of Democrats support it, and Republicans seem to support it at a higher level. So it's kind of one of these issues where I think that. And I'm not sure if we're still here at the early stages of the social media phenomena, but it sure seems like when Twitter lights up on something, that energy bleeds over into the mainstream press in ways that I don't think are accurately reflective of where people are. But the fact that, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I've read that, only like 20% of the population actually reads Twitter, and like 5% of the people on Twitter tweet like 90-something% of the content. So we're not talking about, raw numbers, but it sure has that component of what's interesting. And to be fair to the issue on both sides, I think, the governor has also not backed down and kind of punched back. So that elevates it. And so we just kind of keep going here until, who knows when this is going to end. I think other states are talking about this now. So who knows?
This was a bill that people had not seen before. I think it really did emerge in Florida for the first in the first state really that had it, and the governor has hit on a couple of hot topics that are sort of more national political, newsworthy sort of things. And I think this is one that if you're casting bets or making investments and things to focus on, this is one that if you're looking to make news and get some support from a partisan base, this has yielded a great return.
Yeah, it sure does.
We love these fighting woke corporations like Disney who are making crazy, taking crazy positions. I think it's serving them well.
Yeah. So where does this go? We're gonna keep talking about this for a while. Eventually this will morph into something different, but it seems like it's still got a little energy behind it for now. Anyway, at least it does in the national press.
I think a number of states are following suit. I think the last thing that I saw is probably 18 states are introducing similar bills.
Here we go.
I think that I'm not sure if it's already been filed, but one of the key opponents of the bill has indicated an intention to file suit over it.
Of course.
I think there will be litigation on this, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
See, it's I would say it's the first foray. I think depending on who you talk to, it could be stronger. It could be, and that may be where we go in the future in Florida, or it could be weakened as well. But and I will just add, Bob, to show the balance here, if there is a provision in the bill that if district personnel are concerned that a reasonably prudent person would think that a child will be in danger of abuse as a result of things being disclosed to a parent, it doesn't have to be disclosed. Mm-hmm. But anyway, it's
yeah, the facts. Never let the facts get in the way of a good story. This bill will never come to Illinois. Nothing like it will. We actually deal with things on the other side of the spectrum with mandating all sorts of things on comprehensive sex ed. Now we want to indoctrinate kindergartners and gender identity and all this sort of thing. And it's an interesting phenomenon here. Just the opposite is we're getting a little bit of pushback now in some of the suburban areas against this new mandate that's coming, that will be implemented next school year. And the whole thing of what's going on in our public schools and our public education system is very concerning about what's being taught and how it's being taught and the agendas behind that. And so we're kind of on the opposite end of the issue here in Illinois. And I know many of the other blue states are in a similar situation. So this is not going to end. I think there's going to be a battle here. This is a culture war that we're in the middle of. And I think you used the proper terminology earlier. This is the improper anthropological interpretation of who we are as human beings, and that's what we're trying to say. Men are created differently from women. It's not all that complicated. It's been the teachings it's been the way of like 2,000 years or whatever it's been. So it's just funny how, as we're moving on here, how that gets more and more controversial when 10 years ago that was taken as a given. But whatever. Mike, thanks for taking some time this morning. Best of luck to you. Are you guys still in session then, or do you have still more fun to come, or are you done?
We're done, Bob.
Good.
We're out of session. We're gonna have a special session on redistricting for probably a day or two.
Yep.
But beyond that, all of our substantive issues are done except for redistricting.
So you won't come back then till after the election, I take it, or next year.
That's right. There's some speculation there may be some other special sessions as well, but right now there's nothing else scheduled.
Good. We're in the same boat. We finished early, so I'm very happy. This is the earliest we've ever adjourned. We adjourned on Friday the 8th, and so we're done too. And it's nice to be done in April. It's a strange feeling.
And I just want to say,
I'll take it.
I want to say congratulations up. I heard that you all improved your state scholarship program a little bit this year. Way to go. Congratulations.
We did. Next year's the big year. We're going to try to continue it for the next 10 years or indefinitely. So that's what we're getting ready for next year. So, but that's next year. We'll worry about that. We have some time to prepare for it, and we're working on that already. So, Mike, thanks for taking some time to join us this morning. I will see you in Milwaukee in a couple months.
Sounds great, Bob.
Sounds good. Mike, thanks for
Look
taking
forward to
some
it.
time this morning to talk about what's going on in Florida. That was Michael Sheedy, everybody. He is the director of the Florida Catholic Conference. And don't go away. We'll be right back. We're going to be joined by Shane Hartman. He is the director of the, Illinois Church Action on Alcohol and Addiction Problems. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
At Catholic Charities, we fight hunger in Chicago throughout the year. Our 6 regional offices in Cook and Lake counties work together to offer sit-down and to-go meals to anyone in need. We deliver meals to those who are homebound, and our 8 food pantries offer 3 to 4 days of food supplies based on household size. Participants in these programs have the opportunity to learn about other Catholic charity services that strengthen individuals, families, and their communities. The challenges for those dealing with food insecurity are especially great during the winter months. To learn how you can help those who are hungry in your neighborhood, visit CatholicCharities.net or call 312-655 312-655-7525. That's 312-655-7525. Thank you for your generosity.
Welcome back.
Es fabuloso verlos.
Dobrze jest znowu być razem.
It's good to be together again.
After so many months apart, pandemic capacity limits have been lifted, and we want to welcome everyone back to church. We can all pray together again. And listen as our choirs lift their voices in song.
We've been together in spirit.
And now, when you are ready, our doors are open wide.
Nuestras puertas están abiertas de par en par.
Nasze drzwi są otwarte.
And we're here to welcome you back to Catholic Mass.
Ancestry and genealogy are more important every day. People all over the world are wanting to learn more about their family heritage for personal and for health reasons. At Catholic Charities, we are hearing from adults who lived for a brief time at St. Vincent's Orphanage, the wonderful life-affirming agency that operated out of our headquarters for 91 years, serving thousands of women, children, and families until it closed in 1972. Our post-adoption services help adults who want to learn more about their experience at St. Vincent's. Our compassionate staff members provide whatever family background information they can offer, along with support and reunion services. To learn more, call 312-655-7093. That's 312-655-7093. The spirit of St. Vincent's lives on in the inspiring stories that continue to emerge today.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Bob Gilligan of the Catholic Conference of Illinois, and thank you for listening to our program or watching our program here this morning on the day after Easter. But we're taping today, so once again, thanks for listening or thanks for watching. Next up on the show, on the block here, is Shane Hartman. Shane is the new executive director, and I have to read this because I always mess this up, of the Church Action on Alcohol and Addiction Problems. Shane, are you with us?
I am. Thanks for having me.
There you go. I can see you. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us here this morning and getting to know some of the audience here. Shane, tell us, first of all, a little bit about, you are brand new. You're the new guy on the block. So tell us a little bit about the Illinois Church Action on Alcohol and Addiction Problems. That's a mouthful. Tell us about the organization you represent. How about that? Let's cut to the chase. What do you guys do?
It's a statewide non-for-profit. We're dedicated to preventing problems caused by alcohol, other drugs, and gambling. We've been around for over 100 years, and we're out there fighting the same battle we've been fighting since 1898.
Primarily Protestant churches, some Catholic churches. Methodist, I think, took the lead on alcohol, against legalization of alcohol, right, and gambling and things like that. I mean, that's kind of the roots of the organization, as I understand it, the history of it. Gambling, alcohol, that kind of drugs as well. I know that's another real strong concern of yours as well.
Exactly. I've got 6 kids, so I'm fighting the battle for them.
Yeah, exactly. We all are for our kids in the next generation. So tell us a little bit about some of the issues that you're concerned about here and what the approach is going to be.
Well, there's 2 big bills on the federal level. We're actually supporting one and opposing another one. There's called the Kids Online Safety Act. It's protecting kids online from gambling or marijuana ads or a connection from esports to gambling. It's a big deal. We're hoping it passes. It looks great. We're hoping it gets lots of support. And then the MORE Act of 2022 is attempting to get passed. It passed the Senate just a few days ago, or excuse me, passed the House. It has not passed the Senate. It's in the Committee on Finance. They tried to pass it again in 2019. The MORE Act would federally legalize marijuana across the whole United States and impose a tax, as well as provide folks with exemptions on previous felony convictions dealing with marijuana.
We met recently and talked a little bit about some of the issues here in Illinois, and I think you mentioned the MORE Act is about the federal legalization of marijuana, and some of the concerns about legalization that is now going on since it passed. What was that, 2 years ago? Was that 2019, 2020, whenever it passed? Yes. Tell us a little bit about your concerns about marijuana legalization and what we can do about it.
Well, we continue to have to fight against it. The problem is you drive this legalization. The biggest thing is you're actually encouraging illegal consumption of marijuana. Going back to your dealers, you impose a higher tax. People are going to buy marijuana where they can the cheapest. Mm-hmm. It's actually defeating the purpose of legalizing marijuana to tax it. When people aren't going to pay the taxes, they're going to go back to their drug dealer and continue to consume marijuana on the same level they were. And the benefits just aren't there. I've got an article that was just published just a few days ago that medical marijuana doesn't help with anxiety, depression, and it doubles the risk of addiction from the Massachusetts General Hospital on March 18th. So even the medical marijuana doesn't have the claims of benefits that they've been using to promote the legalization.
This has really been an issue that swept the state and is increasingly being debated throughout the country. That is the legalization of marijuana. And as we were talking recently, we have talked to individuals who are tracking the impacts of the legalization of marijuana. And they're noting that, yes, it's true that there is a significant amount of marijuana being purchased legally. The number of dollars that's going into state coffers due to that taxation is quite frankly overwhelming. The numbers are very high. But as you indicated, the numbers of people who are purchasing marijuana, still purchasing it illegally, is even higher. And that has created an increase in some of the drug trade, and speculation is that some of the gang activity that we're seeing is a direct result of the increase in marijuana coming up from Mexico and other places throughout the country.
Oh, I would agree with all those points. And I'm watching 68 marijuana bills right now. We know that the session ended, but there's 68 marijuana bills on the books right now. They're currently in committee, such as increasing dispensaries, bigger sizes, bigger craft grows, having home grows, there's all these home delivery, there's all drive-up windows, there's all these different marijuana bills on the books right now, which is just going to amplify this same problem that you're talking about, the increase in the illegal side of this problem.
You are a statewide organization. I know there's another related group here up in Chicago, but you have pretty much reach throughout most of central southern Illinois. How do people get in touch with you, or if they're concerned about legalization, or it's not? We should talk also. Well, I know you're very committed to do what you can to prevent the spread of gaming, and casino gaming is legal too, but we were just talking about with my first guest who is involved with trying to reduce recidivism rates from people being released from prison. I think you too are trying to reduce problems associated with gambling and people getting in over the head and addiction problems, things like that. Talk a little bit about your work and with gambling and helping people who are addicted.
We oppose anything that would allow people to be addicted. Gambling's a big thing with online gambling's available. There's a bill on the books for sports betting at universities. We're opposing that. We're trying to help people prevent this addiction. It's a terrible problem. There's about 20% of people become problem gamblers after they start. It's a huge problem. The casinos make 80% of the profits off of 20% of the people, and those people are paying for it dearly.
So tell people how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in these topics. What's the best way to reach out to you or your organization?
We've got a website, ilcap.org. You can reach us on there and read more about us. That's ilcaap.org. You can email me or call me. My email address is ilcaap, ilcaap at sbcglobal.net, or you can call the office at 217-546-6871. Be glad to have a conversation or an email exchange or whatever works. Excited to hear about anybody that wants to partner with us.
Mm-hmm. What, so you are located you are not in Springfield, but you're right outside of Springfield. So you're mostly in central Illinois, your physical location.
Oh, my physical location is in Springfield. I'm on Jefferson Street.
Okay, you are, okay, your office is in Springfield. You live down there. You live down in that area.
Yeah, I live out in the sticks out in Illinois.
Yeah. Anything else we need to talk about? I know we've talked a little bit about gaming, we've talked a little about marijuana, and I know the other thing you focus on too is alcohol problems. There's so much problems with alcohol addiction as well. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, alcohol, the deaths and everything's gone way up since the COVID epidemic. It rose 25% from 2020 to 2019. It's still a serious thing, and now coupling marijuana with alcohol just makes it even worse. There was a young lady in Peoria that's being charged with DUI and possible murder for 2 deaths that are related to a DUI accident in which she had alcohol and marijuana in her system, and it just happens over and over and over again. But it's coupling 2 problems we already have and putting them together to make it even worse.
These things that your organization is fighting, addictions to gambling, addictions to alcohol, addictions to drugs, I mean, these are all things that, take us further away from God. And it's very difficult for those who get entrapped with these vices to get out of them. And so we're grateful to you and your organization to do what you can. I think what you're first trying to do is stop that from happening. And if that's not successful because of the political forces that are facing you and us and everybody, it's nice to see that there's groups out there that can help, get people assistance and help and that kind of thing. Because unfortunately, it just seems like we seem to be growing more and more of these, or they're becoming more and more available to people, and entrapping some people in ways that we haven't seen before. And that's not good for any one of us living here in the state of Illinois.
Exactly. If we can't, fix it legally, I'm going to at least try to educate people. Most people don't know that the marijuana of old was 4% THC. They have marijuana now that's between 95 and 98% THC levels. The Poison Control Center last year's gone up like 48% on calls about marijuana-related incidents with kids trying to eat gummies. And of course, the marijuana level is so high, it's possible to actually overdose on marijuana now, which was not possible with the lower THC levels of the past. And just getting the word out there and telling these kids it's not safe. With the same thing with the alcohol, it's, damages the teenage brain when it's trying to develop, and, anything we can do to prevent that. We've got a poster contest going on, trying to raise awareness that alcohol is also a drug and saying no to drugs, and trying to get the word out there. We message about every school in central Illinois, trying to get them involved. And I've got some posters coming back that we've done for 27 years. And we're just trying to get the word out there that, hey, this stuff is not safe. There's help out there. There's addiction counseling out there. Gateway's a huge organization here in Springfield that helps folks. But, if we can get the word out there and say, hey, this is a problem, watch your kids, protect them. There's just so many terrible vices you could fall into as a kid today. Gambling, esports gaming is tying into gambling now. There's all these big gambling organizations that are trying to reel our kids in, and it's just a scary time, and I'm going to do whatever I can to prevent some of this from happening.
Great. Shane, thanks so much for taking some time this morning. Once again, the website is ilcaap@sbcglobal.net, and his office number is 217-546-6871. It's Shane Hartman from the Illinois Church Action on Alcohol and Addiction Programs. Shane, thanks for taking some time this morning. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Yep,
Thank
take
you
care.
so much.
Yep. This is Bob Gilligan of the Catholic Conference. Thank you for listening, viewing our program here today. And we'll be back on the 3rd Monday in the month of, what's the next month? May. Got it. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.